Scrooge's Christmas Carol, Releasing the Last Chain. Written and illustrated by C. Pippin Lowe. Stave 2, Betrayal at Work. Water parts when entered, but not brick, or at least it shouldn't. But there was Scrooge once again within a dozen years, floating on the outside of his home, hovering several feet above the ground, with eyes closed and fists clenched. Marley tapped him on the shoulder, causing Scrooge's eyes to pop open. Then, realizing his predicament, he began to fall. Screaming, he plunged toward that which would feel solid if struck, but Marley wrapped his hand around Scrooge's wrist. The coldness of his dead touch chilled deeper than the winter's air, yet Scrooge's descent abruptly stopped. Slowly, the two began to rise above Sackville Street. As they did, Burlington Arcade skylights began popping off. In quick succession, they disappeared. Then the rafters supporting them were gone. As the two friends rose higher and higher, the posh stores of the arcade faded away, and the ground on which the building had once stood reverted to grass. "Jacob, where are we?" "When are we is the real question." "Then when are we?" "At the beginning of our partnership, Ebenezer." "Is the beginning of our partnership important to your salvation?" "No, my failing just began the same year." 1813, then?" "Yes. Do you remember that year?" "I remember how sad it was for you." "So sad," Marley said, thinking about the most regrettable event of his life. Then he added, "Here we are." Scrooge looked around the dark street. "Where are the gas lights?" "It's 1813, Ebenezer." Scrooge continued to look around, then asked, "Why are we at Pressy and Barclay's grocery?" "Just watch the glass." Together, they stood in front of the darkened window staring into the glass void. Almost without notice, gas lamps within the store grew bright. The ghosts looked on as a man moved toward them. They heard him whistling "God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen." With a smile on his face, the man stood directly in front of the duo, examining the hanging geese. Finally, he chose the largest of the birds. Taking it down, he placed the goose on the counter. Looking around the store, Scrooge noticed many of the shelves were bare. He opened his mouth to speak, but stopped in thought when he saw a spry Jacob Marley race through the door. Noah, guess what?" "Well, I swear, little brother, you look like you have seen a ghost." Scrooge and Marley looked at each other. Scrooge smiled, while Marley had the look of concern. No, of course not." Placing the money from his pockets on the counter, he continued. "Lori-Ann Bignell gave me £0.50 as a tip. She said, 'The spirit of the season has overtaken my good senses.'" The young Jacob laughed. "I'm just glad it overtook her when I was delivering the groceries." "Well, Jacob, that will make for an extra fine holiday for you. Were you able to make all your deliveries?" "Yes, everyone was even home to pay for them." "Wonderful. Mr. Pressy should be quite happy with the day's receipts. I cannot remember a more profitable day." "That is because there probably never was one." "Well, it is time to close up and celebrate our own holiday. You sweep out while I count the money and prepare the deposit." As the two engaged themselves with the end-of-day chores, the door opened and in stepped an old woman. Her nose was red from the winter's chill. Wind on her face had forced tears to form in the corners of her eyes. Both men looked up to see who had entered. Noah smiled at the woman, while Jacob frowned. With walking cane in hand, she slowly made her way to the counter. "How can I help you, Mrs. Buckner?" Her voice cracked. "I would like to buy a yam," she said, while fumbling with her coin purse. "We have a couple left." "Show me your money," Jacob demanded. Jacob, remember the season. Grumbling, the young Marley went back to his sweeping. Noah rolled the 2 yams in his hand, closely inspecting both. Mrs. Buckner, neither of these yams are the best of quality. Would you mind if I let you have both for the price of one? That would be very kind. Good, good. He pointed to the goose on the counter and added, This is the bird I'm going to feed my wife and young Jacob here for Christmas. The thing is, none of us like the wings. They will only go to waste. Would it be all right if I gave them to you? Will you eat them? Yes, the wings would be nice. Thank you, Mr. Marley. Noah smiled at the fragile woman, separated the wings from the breast, and, after wrapping the items together, handed her the package. She happily gave Noah her penny, turned, and left. Have a wonderful Christmas, yelled Noah after the woman. After she was gone, Jacob whined. I like the wings. Why did you do that? Do you not enjoy the thigh as well? I do. Do you expect to go home hungry tomorrow? No, of course not, but... Putting his hand on Jacob's shoulder, he said, Jacob, you have much to learn about showing thanks for your good fortune. Pulling away, he replied, And you, big brother, have much to learn about how the world really works. It's Christmas. If we cannot be generous now, then when? Noah paused, then added, Do you even know of Mrs. Buckner's situation? No, but I don't see where that would matter. It does. Of course it does. Her husband died last winter. Her son, being the heir, turned her out of the home she lived in her entire adult life. She has nothing now. That is not my concern. Yes, Jacob, the well-being of the community is your concern. No, it is not. Irritated, Noah said, Just get back to your sweeping. Scrooge looked at Marley and asked, You were really that harsh? Be careful of your condemnation, Ebenezer. We were both cut from the same cloth. I know. Your brother was a good man, Jacob. I'm sorry about the fate he met. He was better than I deserved. Jacob, you have become a good soul as well. Soon you may not think that. Scrooge stared curiously at Jacob while the spirit watched his brother count money. As the two engaged themselves with closing procedures, a riding coach rammed into the curb next to the store. The force caused the wheels to jump before settling at a stop. Both men, as well as the ghosts, looked toward the disturbance. Oh, it's Mrs. Swinburne again. Tell her we are closed, Jacob said as Noah walked toward the door. No, Jacob. She's a good customer. She wouldn't be here if it wasn't important. She's a rich customer, you mean? Dear brother, that has nothing to do with it. If you say so, dear brother. As Noah opened the door, the coach driver began wildly ringing his bell. Impatient grump, mumbled Jacob. The open door let in such a gust of chill, Jacob dropped the broom and began rubbing his arms. When Mrs. Swinburne saw Noah, she cheerfully smiled at him, which showed off both the rosy colour of her lip rouge and the gap between her 2 front teeth. Good evening, Mrs. Swinburne. How can I help you? It took you long enough, said the driver. That will be enough out of you, admonished Mrs. Swinburne. Sorry, Noah, but I hope you are still open. We are in the process of closing, but I am always happy to help you, Mrs. Swinburne. Emily, please. I just found out we are going to have unexpected guests. I need a dozen yams and your best bird. I'm sorry we are all out of yams, but have some wonderful potatoes left. Oh, I was afraid of that. Well, potatoes it will be. Do you have more than a dozen? There should be a couple of dozen. I will take them all. Mrs. Swinburne started to hand Noah a £5 banknote, but then hesitated. She withdrew the bill and wholeheartedly gave it a kiss, leaving the imprint of her lips upon it. As she handed Noah the note, she impishly winked at him. Noah took the money, made sure it had been properly signed, then smiled back at the flirtatious woman. As he turned to go into the store, the driver called to him, "Be quick about it, the cold is paining me." Noah turned toward the driver, bowed and said, "Of course, sir." Within minutes he was handing the goods and leftover funds to the woman. As quickly as they arrived, they dashed away, leaving a flurry of snow floating through the air. It took only a few minutes to finish the closing procedures. The last was Noah extinguishing the half-dozen oil lamps. Jacob impatiently stood at the counter, so antsy to leave that when the door was finally opened, he jammed his shoulder against its edge. He ricocheted off the wood, then began running down the street. "Jacob! Jacob!" Jacob slid to a stop on a sheet of ice that had developed from tromping feet compressing snow. With a visible impatience, he turned toward his brother. "You are coming for Christmas?" "Noah, I have to meet an important person tomorrow. I don't think I will be able to attend." "Jacob, what could be so important you have to do it on Christmas?" "I can't talk about it yet." "Well, whatever it is, I will not have it end our holiday tradition. Flora is expecting you for dinner. Do you not remember Cromwell's oppression when people gave their lives to preserve Christmas?" "You know I have not forgotten that, Noah. You will not let me. But I have an appointment." "I will not have it. Jacob, there may come a day you wished you had family to make merry with." "And just where are you and Flora going so I won't have family around?" "We may move. You may move. One never knows." "Oh, have it your way. I will come." Jacob turned and began running again. "Dinner at 2. Don't be late." Scrooge looked over at Marley. Marley was staring at his brother. A tear appeared to drop from the ghost's cheek. How was such a thing possible? A spirit is without physical elements. Were the tears without moisture? Scrooge pondered the thought but said nothing. He only wanted to console his friend, so he put his arm across Marley's shoulders. Noah began walking in the opposite direction from Jacob. Marley tugged at Scrooge and said, "Let us follow him." Oxford Street was nearly pitch black as most of the stores had closed, and the few residences had only dim gas lamps and candles shining through their windows. The sparse lighting made it difficult for Noah to avoid the iced areas. As he walked down the street toward the Bank of London, each breath exhaled flowed around the sides of his face. The people around him were travelling in all directions. Children were running, Christmas carolers were singing, and the others were on their way to holiday celebrations throughout the city. Without warning, a snowball smashed into the side of Noah's head, which sent him spinning across the cobblestones. Losing his balance, he fell on his backside, sending his satchel of money flying through the air. Noah lay sprawled on the ground, breathing heavily while trying to figure out what had just happened. A young man stood over him and asked, "Beg pardon, Governor, are you hurt?" Noah looked into the lad's eyes and said, "I think I am fine. Here, sir, let me help you up." The youth extended his right hand to Noah. Once righted, Noah said, "I had a—" But before he could finish the sentence, the boy handed him his money pouch. Marley and Scrooge watched as Noah thanked the young man, then continued in the direction of the bank. "I assume Noah has the daily receipts in that bag?" asked Scrooge. "He put them in there." "And he is rushing to deposit the money?" Before Marley could answer his friend, Noah, in an effort to sidestep Christmas carolers, slipped and fell again. This time he slid halfway down Snow Hill before stopping, and again his money pouch went flying through the air. It finally came to rest at the feet of the tallest caroller, Sir Stephen Mackintosh. Sir Stephen picked up the bag, looked inside, then began walking toward Noah. Noah, having risen to his feet, started searching for the money. A worried look overtook him as he realized the bag could be anywhere within a half-block area.
"He looks shifty. He's not going to give the money back, is he?"
asked Scrooge. "A person's honesty is not a physical attribute," Marley replied. Before Scrooge could comment further, Sir Stephen handed Noah his bag.
"You dropped this."
Thank you so much." Noah received the pouch from the lanky fellow.
"Sir Stephen Mackintosh, at your service."
"Sir, you are young to have such a distinguished title." The young man just shrugged his shoulders. Noah again thanked the youth, then continued toward the bank. He arrived at the Bank of London only a minute, maybe two, after the doors had been locked. He turned to go home, and without further incident, arrived safely at his door. After entering, he immediately hid the money pouch under a loose floorboard beneath his bed, then promptly began the holiday with his wife, Flora. Upon seeing Flora, Marley started to weep. As tears dropped from his face, they disappeared before striking the floor.
"Jacob, what is wrong?"
"It's all wrong." Crying uncontrollably, he exclaimed, "I deserve a damnation beyond transmography. I cannot continue this, Ebenezer. I will take you home."
"No, Jacob. No matter what you have done, you do not deserve this never-ending torment."
"My dear friend, you speak without knowledge."
"I am not ignorant of your better side, Jacob."
"And yet you know nothing of this chain. It is my task."
"Your task? But why must you suffer indefinitely?"
"Indefinitely. Change for the dead is definite, but only through outreach. By my own energies I am doomed."
"Humbug! Then where are your bindings from our last encounter?"
"It is you that changed, which altered me."
"Humbug, I tell you. It was your influence that modified me. If anything, we changed each other. So, tell me, Jacob, do you still exist? Is it a cloud, a sound, or maybe a mere figment of my imagination I speak to now?"
"No, it is my spirit upon which you speak. As far as to my existence, I am still painfully aware of what I have done."
"As far as your awareness, it seems the desire for change should help to develop reform. Granted, it appears transition happens differently for the dead than it does the living, but all cannot be lost for you."
"I hunger for your truth, Ebenezer, for if it is otherwise, then this whole mission is past hope."
"On some level, you have always known what I speak now is the truth. Remember your first visit to me, some 11 years ago. You told me then that you often sat near me. You called it your penance. Well, what is penance but the acceptance of punishment in an effort to move toward absolution?"
"Dear friend, your enlightened thoughts lift me. But if we are to continue this venture, we must go now. There is a meeting to attend." The sun was rising without any competition from clouds. As the young Jacob walked briskly through the near-empty streets, the crisp morning air chilled his face. Periodically, he would slip on an ice patch, but he never lost his footing and seemed to enjoy the surprise of the slide. Within a half hour, he arrived at his destination, Vigorously, he knocked at the door. "I know this place," said Scrooge. "As you should," replied Marley. The door opened, and in the warmth stood a young Ebenezer Scrooge. "Come in, Jacob." Together, they entered a room with dual chairs near a blazing fire. Each sat, and while Jacob removed his greatcoat and placed it on the back of his chair, Scrooge cleared his voice. So, are you ready to become my partner?" "Indeed, I brought the money." "All of it?" asked Scrooge. "All of it." "I thought you had only £100. Did you not tell me the last time we met that you would pay the other £100 over a 2-year period?" "I did, but I secured a wealthy backer," said Marley. "Just as well. Better terms, I assume." "Oh, yes, much better." "Good. Good business sense," said Scrooge, as a faint smile spread across his thin lips. "Indeed," said Marley. "Well, I did draw up the papers. However, with the terms having changed, I will have to alter the agreement." Scrooge took out his quill and ink, crossed out a few lines, and added "paid in full" at the bottom of the contract. It was then that he called for his sister, Fan, to join them. The two men initialed the changes, then made their partnership official. Fan also signed the contract as the witness. As she left the men to their business, Scrooge said, "She's getting married in a month. I am not keen on her betrothed, but I am told father likes him. So, for what does my opinion count?" Marley sensed the question to be rhetorical in nature, so said nothing. Instead, he handed Scrooge a packet of money. After counting the notes, Scrooge said, "Good, we are in business together." Having completed their work, the two then shared a chalice of brandy. Neither were competent at conversation, so each sat quietly, sipping their drink. Shortly thereafter, Marley bid a farewell and made his way to his brother's home. By the time he arrived, the party had been in progress for over an hour. "I was about to give up on you," said Noah. "I made grandfather's wassail. Come share a toast with us." Jacob accepted the warm cup. They then entered the living room where Flora greeted them. Her sister Joan rose from a chair. As the four clanked cups, Noah said, "May this holiday bring the joy we all desire." Flora and Joan cheerfully said, "Wassail." Jacob followed up with his own weak wassail. "Jacob, I'm so glad you're here. We bought you something special this year. I would have been heartbroken if you had failed to arrive," Flora said. Jacob lowered his eyes and nervously said, "I wish you had not gotten me anything." "Why, that is nonsense. I would never let my husband's brother go without an expression of our love. Besides, this year is special. Noah was told a week ago he's going to get a promotion." "I have not heard of this," Jacob said, looking inquisitively at Noah. "It's true. Yesterday was the main test. Mr. Pressey said if I was able to handle Christmas Eve without his help, I would be made manager. I think the two of us did well. The store made over £110 in sales. It seems to have gone off without a hitch, would you not agree?" Jacob opened his mouth to speak, but instead just stared at Noah and remained silent. "Well, it's time to open our gifts. Then we eat," said Flora. Each person received one gift, except Flora, who was given presents from both Noah and Joan. Because Flora had the most presents, she began by opening the gift from Joan. While the others watched, each took a turn opening their gift. A commotion of excitement was made over each gift. To Noah's new pair of glasses, quips were made about his finally being able to see. Joan received perfume, and Jacob's special gift from Flora and Noah ended up being a beaver-skinned top hat. "Now you all look so dapper, the girls will be clinging to your shadow," said Flora. They were all likeable presents, but it was the last gift from Noah to Flora that caused the uproar. Out of the camouflage of the June 7th, 1813 Star newspaper emerged a painted wooden box. The beauty of the box caused Joan's eyes to widen, Flora's lower jaw to drop open, and Jacob to cough while rubbing his forehead. "Open the lid." Flora very gently lifted the box's lid. She never knew what to expect from Noah. He was as likely to put something in the box that would pop out to startle her as he was to place an expensive piece of jewelry in the box. Before the lid was even halfway lifted, the song Greensleeves burst forth from the box's center. Tears of excitement flowed from Flora, as it was her favorite melody. After the joy of sharing gifts was complete, the four went to the dining area, where they ate a perfectly prepared goose, yams, baked apples with raisins, and the best plum pudding ever consumed. Jacob ate without tasting the food, and before the others were finished with their pudding, he announced his need to leave. "Not yet," said Flora. Noah asked, "Jacob, why must you rush away? I told you yesterday I had an appointment today." "What is this appointment? You've been on edge all afternoon," said Noah. "Well, I suppose I can tell you now. I'm going into business with Ebenezer Scrooge. We are finalizing the agreement today." "What exciting news," said Flora. "Why such a secret?" asked Noah. "I was afraid you would be angry." "Jacob, I do not expect you to be an errand boy forever. I am happy for you. No, actually, I'm proud of you." "Thank you, Noah, but I do have to leave." "Well, if you must, let me send a plate of food home with you." "No, that is all right. Besides, I do not have the time to wait." Without further comment, Jacob rose. "I will walk you out," said Noah. Together, the two walked down the hall to the front door. "Thanks for coming, Jacob. So, you are leaving the store?" "Yes, in a week or so." "Fine. I will see you Monday. Merry Christmas, brother." "Thank you for everything, Noah." With that, Jacob left the house and went directly to his apartment. Scrooge asked, "Why did you lie to your brother?" "I had troubles on my mind." Then he added, "During that period of time, the melancholy gripped me. It still holds me." "I never guessed your serious nature was anything other than who you are." "It is what I became. But as boys, Noah and I were always laughing." "That surprises me," said Scrooge. "Come, it is a new day," said Marley. The Monday after Christmas, Noah arose early. With excitement, he prepared himself for what he believed would bring him an advancement at work. He stepped out into the chill of another day and walked toward the bank. He decided he would buy himself a warmer coat as soon as he received the raise he had been promised. Arriving 10 minutes before the bank opened, Noah paced in front of the doors. The extra effort of movement did little to keep him warm. As he walked back and forth, Bartholomew Pressy, the store's owner, came up behind and tapped him on the shoulder. Noah turned around with surprise, said, "Good morning, sir." "What are you doing here, Noah?" "Mrs. Swinburne arrived late, so I was unable to deposit the Christmas Eve funds," said Noah. "Oh, I see. And your Christmas, was it jolly?" "Oh, yes, sir, quite delightful. And your family, did you enjoy your days off?" "It was wonderful, especially spending time with Reuben. I hardly get to see him now that he's at Cambridge." When the bank opened their doors, both men entered the establishment. Noah unlatched his satchel to retrieve the deposit, then stopped mid-step. He forced his arm into the bag, felt around the edges, then brought his hand out empty. Disbelieving his sense of touch, he looked inside, but could find no semblance of the funds. Seeing the worried look on Noah's face, Pressy asked, "What's wrong?" "The money, it's gone. It's gone? What did you do with it?" "I put it in the bag." Both men looked at each other. The distress in Noah's face showed in his quivering lips. Pressy's growing anger revealed itself through narrowing eyes. "Where could it be? Who other than you had access to your satchel?" "No one, but I did fall twice en route to the bank. However, each time what seemed to be an honourable fellow returned the pouch."
"Honourable humbug! It was Sir Stephen," said Scrooge.
"Careful, Ebenezer," said Marley.
"Who else could it be? He's the one who opened the bag before giving it back."
"Did you actually see him remove the money?"
"No, but—"
"Then take care, Ebenezer. A faulty mindset will cause you harm," insisted Marley. Pressy said, "Noah, you are responsible for that money." "I know, and I will own that responsibility. I just do not know what happened," said Noah. "How could you not know that the money was missing? Did not the lack of weight in the bag give you a clue the money was absent?" "It would have if I had brought the coins, but because of the late start to the bank, I decided to leave them at the store." "Nonetheless, I still have no choice but to place you under arrest," said Pressy. "Could I not work to pay back the money?" "I will not have an employee I do not trust. Your unreliability cannot be tolerated." Scrooge turned upon his ghostly friend and found him tugging at his stringy hair. The tugs turned into jerks. Then suddenly, with a popping sound, a pluck of hair freed itself, carrying with it not only a portion of skull, but also brain matter. As soon as he liberated one handful, he was repeating the process with the other hand. Oddly, the hole created by the hair removal filled in instantaneously, allowing him the ability to repeat the agonizing process again and again. Noah stood quietly, with his eyes focused on the space in front of his feet, while Pressy sent for a constable. Noah could have easily run, but every man of honour within the bank would have given chase. Within 5 minutes, the accused was being led away to Newgate Prison. While en route, people stopped to stare at the sight of a thin, well-dressed man being led down the street by the ill-kept, heavy-set constable. Only a small boy had the spirit to ask, "Are you going to hang him?"
"Move along."
Newgate, the closest prison to the bank, dominated the area in which it stood. Its massive stone block construction and triple entrance created an atmosphere of both strength and peril. For the size of the building, the entrance door was tiny. As the constable knocked upon the wood, an image flashed in Noah's mind of an animal trap, which lets victims in, but through which none can ever pass back to freedom. A chill of fear ran up his spine. "I do not belong here. I have done nothing wrong."
"Quiet."
"Please, I promise to find the money."
"You should have thought of that before you stole it."
Noah opened his mouth to speak, but stopped when the constable raised his index finger to his lip and said, "You will regret your next word." Once inside, the smell of urine, rotting corpses, and all matter of foulness drifted throughout Noah's nose, causing him to nearly vomit. The men were led through a short, dark hallway to a small room. A well-dressed man in a black suit and broad-brimmed hat unlocked the room's door. Inside the room, a man sat slumped on the floor with his back next to the wall. He made no acknowledgement of the newcomers as Noah was shoved into the room. Without a word, the door was slammed closed, and the two trapped men were left in a space without windows, light, or furniture. The darkness penetrated Noah to his core, causing a chill that direct flame could not have warmed. The seated man stood up, walked to Noah, and with one fist knocked him unconscious. As Noah became aware, he had no idea for how long he had lain in oblivion. The first thing he realized was that he no longer wore shoes or a coat. Disoriented, his body, numb from the room's wintry temperature, trembled. He could not recall where he was, or how he got to be lying upon a stone floor. The only light his eyes grasped was the silver flowing from under the door. Then, as though that light illuminated his mind, he remembered it all: the missing money, the arrest, the attack. Jumping to his feet, he turned in the direction of where he remembered his attacker to be seated and yelled, "Give me back my clothes!" The quiet of no response echoed throughout Noah's aching head. With less enthusiasm, he repeated himself and received the same silence. Discouraged, Noah just stood in the middle of the room, quaking from the cold and his growing fear. He was scared to move or speak, for fear he may again fall prey to his attacker. The stillness was broken when the door opened. Only then did Noah realize his assailant had been removed. In the doorway stood a guard holding a young boy by the collar. The turnkey threw the child into the cell. 70 pounds of youth slammed into Noah's chest, propelling him 3 feet backwards. The wall was the only thing that stopped them both from falling. After regaining his balance, Noah helped the child to his feet and asked, "Are you all right?" "Keep your hands off me, bugger! Relax! I will not harm you. Just stay to yourself." The only two who could see in the obscure light were Marley and Scrooge. As the youth backed away from Noah, Marley moved in behind his brother. Standing within inches of Noah's back, Marley pushed his hand to the center of his own chest. Located inside the heart chain spun fire twirlers. He relocated all but one of the captured blazes to his shoulder, then directed the remaining twirler to start spinning the chain piercing his heart. With each flicker from the flame, the circular ring of iron rotated faster and faster, until it was moving so quickly it appeared to disappear. Marley then bit the end of his index finger off. He placed the finger's exposed bone onto the spinning metal, causing sparks to fly from his chest. Upon exiting him, the flickers entered his brother. Noah, not understanding the heat, felt it nonetheless. Slowly, he warmed enough to stop his shivering. Marley continued this process until the door opened, at which time he replaced the remaining fire twirlers back into his heart chain. For a few seconds, the flood of light caused Noah's eyes to clamp shut. A man pointed to Noah and said, "Come along." Looking through squinting eyes, Noah did as he was told. The turnkey shoved Noah along the narrow corridor through a maze of rights and lefts until they entered an office where a man sat reading at a desk. A fireplace blazed the first true warmth Noah had felt since leaving home. The man did not stop reading until he had completed the entire document. Raising his head to look at the subject of his reading, he said, "You are either a very brave or stupid man. Which do you suppose you are?" "I would say unluck—" "I did not ask you to speak," screamed the man. "Are you always this boorish?" Noah said nothing, instead casting his eyes to his shoeless feet. After waiting a few seconds for a response, the man continued, "Well, you must be stupid. You speak when not asked and remain silent when questioned. So, what are we going to do with you?" Again, Noah remained quiet. "Well," the magistrate looked down at the report, then continued, "Mr. Marley, let me tell you how things work around here." He examined Noah, then asked, "Do you always walk the streets without shoes and a greatcoat?" He paused for the reply, then pounded his fist on the desk and bellowed, "Answer me, Mr. Marley." Stunned by the magistrate's demand, Noah quickly responded, "They were stolen by the man in the waiting cell." The magistrate smiled, then said, "It seems you get stolen from a lot.
Why do you suppose that is?" He paused for an answer, but when none was offered, he continued. "You have just learned the law of Newgate. Protect yourself, or you will lose everything. You will not be pampered by me or any of the turnkeys. There are a lot of law-abiding people who do not have a bed, warmth, much to eat, or even clean water to drink. So, why should you have it better than them?" This was a question he knew would not get a reply, nor did he want one, so he continued without pausing. "Being magistrate for London is my occupation, as it is the same for the turnkeys. We are not here to do good for you or even society. We are here to make a living. Everything you will receive will personally cost me money. So, you will be given only the pound of bread and water the law demands. Anything else will have to be purchased, or someone on the outside will have to bring it to you. Expect nothing from me, and we will both remain happy. Do I make myself clear?"
Noah nodded his head to affirm the words were heard.
"You are a quiet one. That just may work to your advantage, but I doubt it. You look like a dead man to me. If you do not replace your clothing, I wager you will be dead within 3 days. Get him out of here," the magistrate chuckled as he enjoyed the thought of just having intimidated another newcomer.
After being pushed through a maze of corridors, Noah was forced into a large room holding mostly men. 2 women and a young boy huddled together in the corner furthest from the fireplace. A dark-skinned woman was scrubbing the boy's neck while the second woman held a cup of whiskey from which the swab was moistened. All but 4 men sat around a long table near the blazing fire. 6 were playing cards, 5 drank beer, and the last 3 clustered together whispering amongst themselves. Of the 4 not at the table, 3 were rolling dice, and the last one was urinating in a metal pot near the women and boy. Only a couple of men drinking beer looked up to watch the newcomer enter. Noah turned toward the gate as the guard secured the entrance. He stood cold, confused, and incarcerated among those he would never have looked at twice on the streets. The closure to the gateway opened a floodgate of emotion. Without warning, an explosive anger overwhelmed him. He ran at the door as though it were open. He flung against the wood with such a force that the sound was heard throughout the room, and then every face turned toward him. The dice rolled into the fireplace, cards fell out of hands, beer splashed on facial hair. The women stepped closer to Noah as the boy stepped away. The 3 deep in conversation hesitated, then continued, and the man urinating missed the pot. Dazed, Noah turned toward the table. Studying each man, he quickly found the one he was trying to locate. The next moment, he began running at the scoundrel, yelling, "Give me my coat back!" He grabbed the collar of the man wearing his coat and yanked him so hard it pulled him off the bench and out of the garment. The 2 began battling over it. "You stole my coat!" "I bought it," said the man as he struggled to his feet. Each match blow for blow with the other. The fighting only ended when the man who had actually stolen the coat spun Noah around and landed a fist to his jaw. For the second time in as many hours, Noah dropped to the floor unconscious. As he came back to awareness, Noah realized both women and a young boy were standing over him. While regaining his senses, the black woman said, "Quiet now, honey. You ain't gonna get nothing in here by making enemies." Noah looked at the woman as though she were from a different planet. Then a young man within the group sensed his confusion and explained, "She's from America, escaped from the land of the free to freedom. Just let her take care of you, she's good. She helped me with these nasty bug bites." "Governor, you stay clear of that James Maxey. He poisoned his wife and daughter, and he'll work against you too," said the second woman. Sitting up, Noah rubbed his jaw and asked, "Who's James Maxey?" Why, he's the one wearing your coat. Bought it from Nathan Simons, the one who knocked you unconscious. I'm gonna get that rotter. No, you ain't. I's taking care of you now. And you staying clear of him, too. The black woman paused to feel Noah's jaw, then continued, I'm Dina Smith. Don't rightly know my real last name. It's stayed in Africa. You can just call me D. Everything's short with me. Don't think anything's broke on you. What are you here for? Asked the boy. A misunderstanding, Noah mumbled. Bloody! Didn't know that was against the law. I may never get out if there's a heavy penalty for that. But let me introduce myself. I'm Joseph Freeman, swell gang member. Have you heard of the gang? No, don't believe so. Just as well. Easier to make your way through a crowded theatre if they think you're one of them. Never got wealth, but them rich blokes, well, they're rich. Joseph paused to look at the bump on Noah's face before adding, I'm the best dipper in the gang. At least I was until they nabbed me. Probably gonna get hanged now. My best mate met the rope a while back. Can't expect no different for me. The well-dressed youth shook Noah's hand, then added, This wonderful ladybird is Martha Hart, and I'd give her my heart any day. Pleased to meet you, mister. She paused, waiting for a response from Noah. Marley, call me Noah. Mr. Marley, you are a pleasant-looking fellow, and I have pleasant experiences to sell. Course, kind of hard to do in here, but not impossible. She winked, then added, I believe your shoes are walking around with Levi over there. Martha pointed to a man standing next to the fireplace, then added, We can get them back for you. He's a Jew, and no one will help him. The coat, it's gone. You best keep close to the flame during the day. Noah looked over at Levi, then confirmed the shoes were his. The four huddled together, plotting their strategy for regaining the stolen footwear. Walking toward Maxie, Marley said, Maybe they can't do anything about that cowardly killer, but I can. Scrooge called after his friend, Jacob, what are you doing? Making life uncomfortable for him. Marley stood in front of Maxie, and with his fingernails, he began to flake the skin on his forearm into a powder. After he had shredded the skin, Marley continued by scraping the ghostly tissues below the epidermis. Within a few minutes, his entire forearm to the bone was a pile of dust. He inhaled until his chest grew to twice its normal size. Then, while retaining the ghostly air, he held the tattered arm in front of Maxie. With one quick release, he blew the mound of ethereal flesh into his face. Instantly, Maxie started to sneeze in quick succession, then frantically began rubbing his skin. I'll do it again, or something worse if I have to, Marley said, as the wholeness of his arm reappeared. While he rejoined Scrooge, he quipped, He won't get over that any time soon. Can I do that kind of stuff? No, Ebenezer. If you were to tear up your arm, you would retain some of the injury back in the flesh. With the luck of an angel, you will never have to do this kind of thing in death. With the luck of an angel, echoed Scrooge. Maxie continued sneezing and coughing to such an extent that everyone near him backed away. The door to the cell flung open. Occupying nearly the entire entrance space stood an enormous turnkey. In a deep, bellowing voice, he yelled, All right, you bitches and curs, it's time for the yard. Some of you dogs have got people waiting. Hurry up, I've no time to waste. Every person, except Noah, raced toward the door. Being the last person in line, the gatekeeper stopped Noah and said, Last out pays the toll. That'll be a penny. Infuriated, Noah asked, And what if I decide not to pay? Then you don't get to talk to a young man who looks just like you at the cage. The family resemblance is twin-like, wouldn't you agree? Noah took a coin from the toe of his sock and tossed it at the extortionist. "Here's your bloody penny." Without haste, he sidestepped the husky turnkey and followed Joseph, who had waited for him. Together, they made their way to the narrow yard. The extreme chill of winter penetrated his skin like the fangs of a rabid dog, without malice, yet nonetheless inflicting great harm. Noah hurried to the iron-barred enclosure facing the street. Waiting on the street side was Jacob. Before Noah had even touched the bars leading to the free side, he ordered his brother to give up his coat and shoes to him. "Where are yours?" "Never mind that, just give me yours now," Jacob did as instructed. As he handed the coat through the bars, a metal spur snagged his arm, creating a cut over 2 inches in length. Jacob jumped back while shouting, "Bloody! Oh, what was that?" Together, the two inspected the iron rod and saw that someone had taken a knife and cut into the metal, causing a portion of the iron to curl away from its host. The barb created a sharp point, which would snag anything that passed near it. Upon closer inspection, they realized someone had made a sport of cutting the bars. Several had various lengths and thicknesses of metal projections protruding from them. Carefully, Jacob handed Noah his shoes. Putting on Jacob's clothes, the leftover warmth caused Noah's toes to tingle. As his feet started to regain feeling, the thought of reclaiming his shoes from Levi left him. Noah groaned more from the pleasure of the heat than the pain of the numbness. Immediately, Jacob began hopping from foot to foot in an effort to repel the chill. "Mr. Pressy fired me," said Jacob. "You were quitting anyway. I need you to help me. I came as soon as I heard. Thanks for coming. I want you to bring me the warmest clothes I've got. Bring everything from underwear to boots and a hat. I'll bring them tomorrow. Bring money, at least a few pennies each day. And food, plus water. I'm counting on you, Jacob. Do you think you can do this for me?" "Yes, of course, Noah. You're a good brother. Does Flora know?" "I don't think so, but then you know how news travels. Go to her as soon as you leave me. Tell her, but don't let her come here." "How can I stop her?" "I don't know. I just can't have her seeing me like this. I'm counting on you, Jacob, to keep her away from this wretched place. I will do my best. Mr. Pressy told you what happened." "Yes, he had to when he fired me. I did not steal that money. You believe me, don't you?" "Yes, of course I do." "Oh, thank you, brother. You don't know how important it is to me that you trust me. I know you wouldn't steal money, even if you had none." "Well, I don't know if I would go that far." They smiled at each other, but the situation was too serious to laugh. "I need you to try and figure out what happened to the money." "How do I do that?" "Try and find the note Mrs. Swinburne paid with. Before handing it to me, she marked it with a kiss. Look for the imprint of her lips." "She probably does that to most of her notes. She flirts with all the pants and even some of the skirts." Yes, but this one was different." "In what way?" As she handed the bill to me, her hand smudged the rouge, which left a fingerprint at the top of the lip image. Scrooge looked at Marley as Noah continued. "In the end, her lip created a pattern which looked more like a mother hushing her child than a seductress in search of a mate." The young Jacob's eyes widened as Scrooge looked upon Marley. "I know that bill, Jacob," said Scrooge. "It does not surprise me you remember." "How could you do this to your own brother?" "How could I do it to anybody, Ebenezer? Why would I do it to anybody?" He paused, then answered his own question. "The opportunity just presented itself, and I took it." "Yes, but stealing the money with which we became partners." "My spirit has lived with the burden of having stolen that money for nearly half a century, and now my heart has a shackle that time alone will never dissolve."
Your suffering is nothing compared to Noah's.
True, though that is all suffering pains. Marley howls with anguish as he rips the chain from his heart. A ghostly spray of blood and dust gushes from the wound. Within a moment, the heart self-repairs, and the chain, larger than before, grips it with an intensified torment.
I don't know if I can continue helping you.
Then I should take you home.